Most people travelling through this part of Poland go straight to Kraków. But around 80 kilometres further east lies Tarnów, a city of just over 100,000 people and the second largest city in the Małopolskie voivodeship. Tarnów is difficult to define with one label. It was once a private noble city, later a major Renaissance centre, and eventually an important industrial and regional hub. Its identity has been shaped by different cultures, by war and loss, and a powerful tradition of fighting for freedom. But Tarnów also has a personal meaning for me. It was one of the last places outside of Kraków that I visited with my dad. I came here briefly with my parents, but the rain stopped us from seeing much beyond the town square. We ate in one of the restaurants and then we left. So when I returned with Warsaw Global in February, it felt as though I was coming back to finish something. And what I found was not a quiet city fading beneath Krakow's shadow. Tarnów felt alive, warm in character, full of people, and packed with historical remnants and playful surprises. Around almost every corner, another story seemed to be waiting. And fittingly, I began rediscovering Tarnów, not in the town square, but above the city, among the ruins on St. Martin's Hill.
Dzień dobry and welcome to A Britain Poland. With this channel, I travel across the country, I bring you the culture, and I show you just how amazing Poland is. So I invite you on my journey. If you want to see more, I have Facebook and Instagram profiles, which you will find links to in the description below. And if you want to really help out, you can turn to my Patreon or Patronite accounts, again in the description. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy this video. Please like, share and subscribe. Do zobaczenia.
Long before Tarnów became known for its Renaissance streets, this hill was already a place of settlement, defence and power. Archaeological discoveries suggest that fortified settlements existed here in the early medieval period. But the story of Tarnów as a city truly began in the 14th century. In 1330, King Władysław the Short granted Tarnów city rights under Magdeburg law. Beyond its foundation was Spisomir Lelewita, one of the most influential noblemen in medieval Poland. At almost the same time, between 1328 and 1331, Spisomir built a castle here on St. Martin's Hill. Only fragments remain today: broken walls, sections of stonework, and the outlines of rooms that once stood above the city. But the ruins are still distinct enough to explore and to imagine what this place must have once been. This was the seat of the family whose name became inseparable from Tarnów. For centuries, Tarnów remained a privately owned noble city, giving its ruling families enormous influence over its architecture, culture, and economy. Under the Tarnowski family, the medieval town beneath this hill would be transformed into something far more ambitious. By the 16th century, Tarnów had become one of the most important private cities in southern Poland. At the centre of that transformation was Jan Tarnowski, soldier, statesman, and Grand Crown hetman. Under his rule, the city was modernised. Wooden bridges in the centre were gradually replaced, new defences were created, and Tarnów began to take on the ordered, confident appearance of a Renaissance city. Nowhere is that transformation more visible than in the Rynek. The square is compact, colourful, almost theatrical. Decorated tenement houses surround it, while the town hall rises from its centre. The building began with Gothic foundations, but its Renaissance appearance was shaped under the influence of the Italian architect and sculptor Giovanni Maria Padovano. Its attic, masks, and sculpted details make it feel less like a simple administrative building and more like a statement. Tarnów wanted to be seen as cultured, powerful, and modern. Sadly, I did not manage to go inside the town hall, so I missed both its museum collection and the view from the tower, but even from outside, it gives Tarnów something many larger cities struggle to create. A centre that feels grand without becoming overwhelming. Just beyond the Rynek stands Tarnów Cathedral. The church has medieval origins, but inside of some of Poland's most remarkable Renaissance tombs, including the monumental Tarnowski family tomb created by Padovano. The cathedral was another place I could not enter this time due to Mass, one of the several reasons Tarnów already feels worthy of a return visit. Renaissance Tarnów was not shaped by architecture alone. Poles lived alongside Jewish, German, Scottish, Austrian, and Roma communities, adding to the city's trade, culture, and identity. That mixture of noble ambition and international influence helped Tarnów earn its reputation as a pearl of the Polish Renaissance. But its greatest claim to history would come centuries later, during one extraordinary night in 1918. For most people, the story of Polish independence is tied to one date, the 11th of November 1918. But Poland did not return to the map in a single moment. As the First World War ended and the Austro-Hungarian Empire began to collapse, authority across the partitioned Polish lands broke apart city by city, and Tarnów moved first. The city had been under Austrian rule since the first partition of Poland in 1772. For Tarnów, the wait for freedom had lasted 146 years. On the evening of the 30th of October 1918, the city council rejected Austrian authority. Then, during the night, Polish officers, soldiers, and independence activists carried out a carefully organized takeover. The Austrian garrison was disarmed, military and administrative buildings were secured, and the operation was completed without bloodshed and without a shot being fired. By the morning of the 31st of October, Tarnów was in Polish hands. Before Kraków, before Warsaw, and 11 days before the date now celebrated as Poland's National Independence Day. This is why Tarnów calls itself Poland's first independent city. Independence was a process rather than one simple event, and other places were making competing claims. But Tarnów was the first major Polish city in which both civilian and military authority passed successfully into Polish hands. After nearly a century and a half of foreign rule, freedom arrived here quietly, through preparation, cooperation, and the courage to act at exactly the right moment. Before Poland formally declared itself reborn, Tarnów had already begun living as though freedom were real. That courage had deeper roots. Józef was born in Tarnów in 1794 and became one of the 19th century's most extraordinary soldiers and revolutionaries. He fought during the Napoleonic era and became a celebrated artillery commander during the November Uprising. Later, during the revolutions of 1848 and 1849, he became one of the leading commanders in Hungary's struggle against Habsburg rule. His victories in Transylvania turned a Polish exile into a Hungarian national hero, affectionately known there as Father Bem. Today, his ashes rest in Székely Park inside one of Tarnow's most distinctive monuments. His sarcophagus stands above the water on 6 columns, surrounded by inscriptions in Polish, Hungarian, and Ottoman Turkish. Even in death, he seems suspended between the nations whose histories he earned. A son of Tarnów, a hero of Poland and Hungary, and a man who fought for freedoms that were not only his own. Bem's story was exceptional, but the spirit behind it was not. When another Polish uprising began in January 1863, volunteers from the Tarnów region crossed into Russian-controlled territory, while the city helped gather supplies and support. Their memory survives in Tarnow's old cemetery, where a monument marks the grave of fighters from that January uprising. By the time freedom finally came in 1918, Tarnów had already spent generations remembering those who had fought for it. Some of Tarnow's most important stories are now told through what is missing. Jewish life was woven deeply into this city for centuries. By the eve of the Second World War, around 25,000 Jewish people lived here, close to half of Tarnow's population. They were merchants, craftspeople, teachers, doctors, artists, and activists. The community included Hasidic families, secular residents, and supporters of the Zionist movement. This was not a footnote to Tarnow's history, it was part of Tarnów itself. One of the clearest surviving traces stands on Żydowska Street. This is the Bima, the raised platform from which the Torah was read inside Tarnow's old synagogue. The synagogue was burned by the Germans in November 1939 and later destroyed. Only the Bima survived. Standing alone today, it can look almost like a monument designed to represent absence. But once it stood at the center of a living place of worship, surrounded by voices, families, and everyday life. Persecution began almost immediately after the German occupation. On the 14th of June 1940, 728 prisoners were deported from Tarnów to the newly established concentration camp at Auschwitz. Most were Polish political prisoners, alongside a small group of Polish Jews. They became the first mass transport of prisoners sent there. In June 1942, mass deportations of Tarnow's Jewish population began. Around 13,500 people were sent to the Belzec killing center. Others were murdered in the city, nearby woods and the Jewish cemetery. The remaining population was forced into a ghetto, which the Germans destroyed in September 1943. By the end of the occupation, a community that had existed here for centuries had been almost completely erased. We ended this part of our journey at the Jewish cemetery on the outskirts of the city. Founded in the 16th century, it contained thousands of graves and is now one of the oldest surviving Jewish cemeteries in southern Poland. It is also a place of mass murder. A broken stone column marks the grave of around 2,000 Jewish people killed here by the Germans between 1942 and 1943. After the colour and movement of the town square, the cemetery felt like another world, quiet, overgrown in places, and powerful precisely because so much of the community it represents is no longer here to speak for itself. But Tarnów was not allowed that story to disappear completely. The bema still stands, the cemetery still bears witness, and the memory of that lost community appears again in one of the city's most unexpected modern details. That detail appears on Tarnów's Cathedral, the city's barrel organ player. Standing near the outdoor market, he looks at first like one of Tarnów's playful street figures, but engraved into his instrument is the image of the bema. It is small and easy to miss, yet it connects this cheerful modern sculpture to the Jewish community that once formed such a large part of the city. Tarnów's memory is not confined to museums and cemeteries. Sometimes it appears quietly in the middle of ordinary life. And this is one of the things I appreciated most about the city. It remembers its past without becoming trapped inside it. The clearest example was the Maszkaron trail. Paulina had collected a map from the tourist office, and our walk suddenly became a treasure hunt. Scattered around the city were small, strange figures, each with its own name and story. There was the jester, the bookworm, the spirit of the theatre, the lovers on the bridge of love, and the filmmaker, whom I obviously felt professionally obliged to find. Some figures came with little rituals intended to bring luck, fulfill wishes, or improve your chances in love. And sometimes good fortune demanded a small sacrifice of dignity. At one statue, a member of our group had to spin around while clucking like a chicken. Fortunately, somebody captured the evidence. And after the stories of war, uprisings, and loss, the trail changed to the rhythm of the day. It drew us into streets we might otherwise have passed, and turned Tarnów from a collection of historical sites into somewhere we were actively playing with and exploring. That balance is one of the city's greatest strengths. Tarnów can give you Renaissance architecture, medieval ruins, and monuments to national heroes. Then, around the next corner, it asks someone to impersonate poultry in pursuit of good luck. The 20th century left other serious marks here too, including a monument to the victims of Stalinism. But modern Tarnów does not feel defined only by tragedy. Even on a cold February weekend, the market was busy, the town square had energy, and around almost every corner was another building, monument, or curious figure seemed to be waiting. This was not a city standing quietly in crack of shadow. It had its own rhythm, its own stories, and, unmistakably, its own personality. When I first came to Tarnów with my parents, the city was little more than a glimpse. It was raining, we saw the square, we found something to eat, and moved on. Returning with Warsaw Global, I finally saw what we had missed. I climbed to the castle ruins. I walked beside the wooden church and the stream. I explored the cemetery on the edge of the city, and I returned to the same town square, even eating again in the restaurant that I visited with my mum and dad. That gave Tarnów an extra significance for me. But nostalgia alone is not what made it special. Tarnów felt alive. Even in winter, its streets had movement, and almost every corner offered something unexpected. Medieval stonework, a Renaissance facade, a monument carrying the weight of history, or a strange little figure waiting to grant a wish. And despite everything we saw, I still felt like we had only scratched the surface. I never made it inside the town hall, or the cathedral, or the ethnographic museum. There were rooms unseen and reasons already waiting for me to return. Like Kalisz, Tarnów is one of those Polish cities that rarely appears near the top of international travel lists. But Tarnów does not need to compete with Kraków. It has its own history, warmth, and unmistakable character. It is a city of Renaissance beauty, resistance, and remembrance. A city that became free before the rest of Poland, and a city that still knows how to be playful. I first came here to share a brief moment with my parents. I came back to finish that memory. Instead, Tarnów gave me an entirely new one. So, if you are exploring Poland beyond the obvious places, do not simply pass Tarnów on the way to somewhere else. Give it time, follow the trails, look around the corners, and let the city surprise you. Have you visited Tarnów, or is it now somewhere you would like to add to your list? Let me know in the comments. And if you would like to discover more of Poland's overlooked cities, hidden histories, and places that deserve far more attention, subscribe and join me for the next video. I've been a Brit in Poland. Thank you very much for watching. Do zobaczenia.